Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Homeowners insurance increasing or deductible too high? Call, click, or come in. Save it, Dave. Dave Miette Insurance Agency.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, tire siping, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
Cnc Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, Cnc provides patient-centered care for your entire family. Cnc Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we cover all the home teams, including the Final Four, which is here in New Orleans, on a beautiful day here in Old New Orleans, live from our Ponce Stream Production Studios. Hope, again, anybody had to deal with the inclement weather. Second time we're saying that in a row, and second week in a row. Hope, again, that you didn't have too much damage, and again, you're able to move forward. And of course, our thoughts and prayers are still with the folks in Araby that are trying to be able to recover from last week's tornado. Let's let that be the last time we have to deal with this during this springtime. But I guess it's going to be a big weekend here in the city. Again, you can always see the traffic if you're driving around New Orleans right now, starting to pick up. Final Fours in town, and of course, a lot going on. So we'll talk about the Saints, LSU, Tulane, Pelicans. We'll touch on some college baseball. We'll talk about the Final Four as well. So really a full show for us today. One of the best we have in the city, bar none. He's the voice of UNO Athletics. He is, again, one of the main people behind CrescentCitySports.com. And, of course, he is my colleague over at 106.1 on All Access. And, of course, it's Jude Young. Jude, welcome to the show, as always. Always good to have you.
It's always great to be here and to have a chance for a breather because I'm not so busy with UNO basketball season over with, although I'll be enjoying Final Four weekend following the star from this year's team, Derek St. Hilaire's in the slam dunk contest, 3-on-3 competition, national all-star game, so I'm excited to enjoy that. And of course the Final Four being such a huge event in town. But we're still busy at Crescent City Sports covering clearly Final Four week, the Saints off season, the Pelicans playoff push, high school sports ramping up for the spring. As a matter of fact, today as we film this live from Baton Rouge, the high school bowling championships, we're broadcasting that, and it's exciting to be doing that for the third straight year. And as you mentioned as well on the radio, time to focus more a little bit on my show. I'm always on Tuesday nights when UNO baseball isn't on the airwaves from 6 to 7, part of Ken Trahan and I, with All Access each and every night following your great show.
And it's all, again, look, it's good to have you here. As a lot of people know, again, the knowledge is just exceptional, and I'll always get a lot of good feedback when you're here. All right, let's start with the Saints because $21.2 million in cap space now after, again, the flirtation with Deshaun Watson. Let me ask you about that first, your take on that, and what could have been, what has happened, and of course the baggage that came with Deshaun Watson. And then we'll move on to what's happening now.
There's so much to unpeel with that too, isn't there? Because what do you say? It's a risky proposition jumping into that. Cleveland won the battle, but will they lose the war? We still don't know about the civil cases going on with Watson. We don't know how the community is going to react to that, even though I will argue that in the end there were so many teams in on it that needed a quarterback, because if you win, it doesn't matter. It's professional sports. You may not like how that sounds, and you don't have to support the product if you don't like it, but that's how it goes. And I think we all understand why the Saints were trying to get another generational type talent at quarterback, rarely available. It just didn't work out. So maybe it winds up being the best thing that ever happens to this team, because they've been successful as much because they've had one of the best 53-man rosters in football for several years. That doesn't necessarily happen when you start trading away high draft picks for multiple years, like what would have happened if Deshaun Watson were here. So we'll see, but if you don't have the right quarterback, all of that talent doesn't matter. Is it going to be Jameis Winston? Well, he's going to get a really good shot at it as a result. I think that was the right decision. It was the obvious plan B, and it's good that Winston, even though it hurt his ego a little bit, has matured enough to realize it's the best spot for both sides. Again, this is professional sports. Feelings get hurt sometimes, but what's your best fit? His best fit is here, and without Watson, it was obvious he's the best fit for the Saints for now.
You know, it's interesting because let's look at history, right? And let's be honest and up front. Winston had his issues. Accused of rape at Florida State, the Uber driver situation, the stealing of the crab legs. We go right down of, again, where, again, he is as opposed to what Watson is in this moment in time. Now, the difference is we've seen a transformation of Jameis Winston, growing up, married, child. Again, in this country, we thrive on giving people second chances. And, you know, he's, again, a lot of stuff when it was with Tampa Bay was just ignored. You know, we're looking the other way. He's a #1 overall pick. He's our franchise, fulfills our franchise, and they look the other way in a lot of cases. But over time, he has rehabilitated his image and seems to be a more mature individual. Deshaun Watson's in the middle of this right now. Okay? I mean, I saw an excerpt of one of the depositions the other day on social media, and this is what I was trying to convey to the audience, both radio and TV, of what the Saints would have been dealing with. You know, Tampa was able to tread water, get through it, and look, maybe Cleveland will as well. Okay, but for the moment, at least, you know, in the short term, you have to get through this. Now, they're saying that he probably won't be on the commissioner's exempt list because there's no criminal charges. But yet again, there's probably going to be a suspension as well. The question is, was it worth it? And then I guess the surprising thing was a female owner that was all in as well. She has done so much, Mrs. Benson, in terms of opening up doors for females in sports. Especially with the Pelicans. I mean, you can see it. You know, I mean, you know, they have maybe more females that are involved in the day-to-day with the Pelicans than any other franchise in any other sport. So, and again, a lot of that opened up the doors there. And how much would that have hurt her image down the line here? Look, you cannot discount the talent, right? I mean, the talent, this guy is a top 5 quarterback. He is a game changer. The question is, how much could you have accepted the baggage of a Deshaun Watson and dealing with it right in front of your face, you know, for maybe a year or so before, again, it just goes off into, you know, as we are microwave society, right, into old news. Again, a lot of people forget about Jameis Winston, everything he went through. But the difference is he's matured. He seems to turn his life around. And Watson is in the middle of this right now.
And you just brought up a great point that goes the other way when it comes to Gail Benson. Here's a woman in an ownership position in professional sports. Marquee position as far as visibility and what that means to all of women working and trying to become powerful in sports, where it's been a long process, I think really triggered by Title IX as the first step in that direction. She was willing to not only forgive Jameis Winston to give him multiple chances here, but also now was open to bringing in Deshaun Watson because she also is a woman of deep Catholic faith, as we know. So it goes to show you that the Saints probably would have been in a better position than any other franchise, any other market to deal with it, because she would have been the one pulling the trigger in the end, making that decision. So I think the Saints would have been fine there versus it looking like much more of a cold business decision elsewhere, and certainly how it appears right now in Cleveland, where they unlike the Saints, who enjoyed the ultimate as far as image goes, not only talents as well, obviously, with Drew Brees for so long, but they had Johnny Manziel at quarterback. They've had an immature quarterback that's now looking for another place to play right now in Baker Mayfield, whereas the Saints have had that stability. So the stability of the franchise and the particular owner in question would have made it a lot easier for the Saints, and I totally supported a decision. I didn't think she was going to clear the way to be made to pursue Watson in the first place. Now that's all gone, and it's up to, just like Watson in Cleveland, it's up to Jameis Winston to reward the faith that Benson and the franchise has put in him, and I think he will off the field. I do believe he's matured, where I still watch Watson, and again, I'm no body language expert. We all have our opinions on whether a person's genuine
but in this
or not.
business, we look for body language.
Right, and for him, I see somebody that maybe hasn't matured yet and just wants to get back to his life. He got a big pay raise and a new contract out of this when he should have paid a little bit more than missing one season with a bad team where he wouldn't have been successful anyway. When it comes down to Winston, I believe that he truly has matured as a married man who wants to make the most of his career and have an image that he can be proud of when he's done with football, hopefully many years from now.
I would agree. I think, again, when you look at him, that's the difference of where they are in this space and time. In this space, I'm not going to say that Watson's not going to overcome this, that it's not going to be the greatest decision in the history of the Cleveland Browns. Again, that they took the brunt of a public opinion, and then they're past that now because, again, we know that America moves on very, very quickly.
There's no doubt. Very
quickly. To Jameis Winston. He came in, supposedly it was a kumbaya. Some say there might have been a few extra million thrown in. Look, it's $15 million guaranteed. I'm sorry, $14 million signing bonus, $15.2 million guaranteed, $28 million over 2 years. It's really a one-year deal. If again he's not the quarterback they think they are, they can move on after a year. Again, with not a lot of cap consequences. What are your thoughts about Jameis Winston coming off the ACL? We know he's a leader, okay? We know he's got some leader. He's been a really great leader everywhere he's been. But again, will he stay the quarterback that he was last year with Peyton on the sidelines, as opposed to, again, without having Peyton on the sidelines and all the strides that we saw him make, again, in terms of protecting the football, almost overcautious at times, right?
Right.
I mean, does that change now without having, again, the genius of Peyton and, of course, the wrath of Peyton that we all know of?
You mentioned the health first. I don't think that's a concern at all. We've seen videos of him. The way these guys come back from injuries now, he's going to be fine for training camp and ready to roll. I think he's going to be a much more similar version, both good and somewhat bad, of what we saw in Tampa Bay than what we saw last year. I think Dennis Allen understands in order to get the most out of his offense, they've got to open it up more. And yes, we'll get to the fact that they need to get him better weapons. But assuming that he has better weapons than the quarterbacks had last year to work with, they need to let Jameis Winston take more chances and live with that. And as a defensive-minded coach, a long-time coordinator, him making the decision to go with Winston, that's a little riskier than maybe other options they could have gone for. Maybe he tells Mickey Loomis instead, I want to get Jimmy Garoppolo. He's a more stable, safe option. Instead, they all agreed, let's go with Winston because the upside is there. In order to reach that upside, we're going to have to see a little bit more as far as an open offense goes than what we saw last year. And we don't know how long Alvin Kamara is going to be unavailable this year, if at all. But chances are he's going to miss multiple games because of the off-the-field incident. So that's another reason why you're going to have a passing game that's a little bit more dangerous, more dynamic, and built to tailor around what he does well. I know he keeps saying I'm working on my intermediate passing to be able to throw in that 10 to 15 range a lot better than I have with consistency. But at the same time, he's an excellent deep ball thrower.
Yes, he is.
And you've got to put players around him that can take best advantage of that, to give him the chance to make big plays. Because in the NFL, the teams that make the biggest plays, look at the Super Bowl teams. Cincinnati, big play offense, no doubt. The Rams, because of their ability to make the big play, having maybe the most productive receiver in football this year, Cooper Kupp, and then what Odell Beckham brought. That explosiveness is crucial today. The Saints didn't have enough of that, and it basically disappeared when Jameis Winston got hurt. They've got to have more to take advantage of what he does well and what you need in order to win enough games in the NFL, not to just be a Super Bowl, and I say this all the time, a Super Bowl dreamer, a playoff hopeful. You want to be a contender. A contender means not only making the playoffs, but dangerous enough to get to the Super Bowl when you're there.
I would agree. Look, I'll take you back to the Saints, right? Shock and awe, right? Well, I mean, when Peyton first got here, this was a dynamic offense. You had to cover all the whole 100 yards of the field because, again, you knew that, again, they could take the top off the defense at any time. You know, Breeze, well, before, again, he started to age, and, you know, again, he went to more with the intermediate passing. Sure. They were a long ball offense as well. I would agree with you. Let's go to the next step here then, which is really, I think a lot of fans are frustrated with this. And I'm going to be honest with you, as a host, when I take this cap off as a season ticket holder, I'm a little frustrated as well. $21.2 million. I understand that they have a plan that they've always had in place. They're not going to overpay for free agents, and I get that. But there was a time when this team had cachet with a Peyton and a Breeze, where players would take less money to come here, right? Where players wanted to play here. Players don't know who Dennis Allen is. They have no idea what's going to happen with the offense, if it'll be the same. In my opinion, this might be the year where maybe you have to overpay just a bit, okay, to be able to maybe bring in some weapons, especially if you're in a situation like what they were with Valdez-Scantling, where again they were competing against another team for his services.
But guess what? Mickey Loomis said he's not going to do that. Right. He made that very clear, and it's not because the Saints don't have cachet anymore, but because they don't want to get caught overpaying. They got caught by the pandemic, and all of their salary cap management plans blew up on them. Nobody could predict that. Now they have a chance to have the ability to be more competitive in the free agent market and find those pieces, find the Demario Davises of the world that can make a huge difference at one spot and open up the world. They don't want to jeopardize that. And honestly, when you look about the margins for them, now since quarterback is settled and what can push you over the top, what is out there anymore? Or what was out there early even in free agency that you could argue, boy, you make this expenditure, get this guy, overpay a little bit. Does that really change anything for them? Just like with retaining their own free agents. They would argue that, hey, Marcus May, we're probably going to get enough out of him saving $5 million a year versus what Marcus Williams brought to the table. Just one example. And you sort of extrapolate that to every different position. Teron Armstead, he missed so many games, they could look back and see their records in those games he missed. It was probably about even. I haven't seen anybody write on that, but I bet their win percentage was about the same. Sure, over the long haul, you'd like a better left tackle, but at the same time, the Saints have figured out, well, we can make it work rather than overpay for somebody who's older and injury prone. We're not going to do that in-house, and we're certainly not going to do that with the devil we don't know if we're not going to do it with the devil we know. What
about a guy like Duran Matthew, who again is almost campaigning to be a New Orleans Saint? Now, I would think that both sides have to give a little bit here. He made $14 million last year. The Saints wouldn't pay Marcus Williams $15 million. So again, are you going to turn around and pay Duran Matthew that kind of money? They weren't willing to be able to pay Duran Armstead to be able to hold on to him. What do you think that situation will be?
Well, the question is, what's the personnel fit? He plays essentially at his best the same position and has for a long time that C.J. Gardner-Johnson has, although that's one of the players active on social media like crazy saying, hey, let's get this guy, dreaming about it. Who plays where? Now, Gardner-Johnson may have the ability to move into Malcolm Jenkins' role now that he's retired and they don't have anybody to fill it at this moment in time. Maybe that works and you allow Matthew to do what he is best at doing, the older, more veteran player. Sure, you can work that out, but maybe that hasn't been all worked out yet. And Matthew, at the same time, thinks, if I'm a little patient here, I'm still a valuable player. The last time he had to wait and sign a one-year deal, he did so with a Texans team that was a clear playoff contender with Watson. It didn't hurt him to wait. He may do that again here versus stepping. He is 29, but that's still young. We kind of think of him as somebody who's older than he is. He can still wait because there are plenty of teams who are thinking, boy, if we can make it work out for the right price, this guy for this upcoming season could help us get over the top. The Saints, I don't believe for a second, are the only ones, just because he's been in town and in Baton Rouge lately, visiting back in Louisiana, his home turf. It's been more in our headlines, but he's being discussed in many front offices.
In almost every market, no doubt. The big question is weapons. And to me, Breeze raised the level of the weapons here in New Orleans. You could get undrafted free agents. You could get 7th-round picks like Marcus Colston. And those guys were elevated by Breeze. A lot of those guys were tacticians in terms of they're running their routes. They could catch the football. And then Breeze did the rest. based on what we've seen from Jameis Winston in his career, he looks like he's not a guy that raises all boats, but he's a guy that needs weapons around him to be effective. Right now, they're just going back with what they had previously. You know, they said with that receiver room. That receiver was not very good last year. And now you could say they may be better with a year of experience. They got a lot of experience last year. That's a roll of the dice. What about, again, the weapons on offense? I realize this upcoming draft has a plethora of wide receivers, not just in the first round, into the second day and third day. But it says something to be able to bring in veteran wide receivers to be able to augment what you have. What are your thoughts?
I think that has to happen. I think it's going to happen with the cap room they have. There's no excuse other than overpaying again to keep that from happening. You have to question, though, is Jarvis Landry another LSU and local product? Is he the right kind of fit there? He's somebody who doesn't thrive at gaining separation, for example, but he'll catch balls in traffic. He is a physical, reliable receiver. Does he make you better as a number 2? Maybe he doesn't, because does he complement what Michael Thomas, now expected to be fully healthy as your 1, gives you? I don't think he does. I think you need to have more of a field stretching threat to help out Thomas. How many of those guys are out there? Well, the Saints obviously saw a very flawed player in Marquez Valdez-Scantling as that kind of help. They didn't get him. They didn't overpay for him. Who is it? I don't know. I look at the market and I think other than Will Fuller, who's extremely injury prone and probably winds up back with, again, I don't know, but Deshaun Watson is an awfully good fit for him, isn't it? Because they played together before and he'll be able to get his career back going and make plays if he's healthy with a quarterback that knows him. Other than him, there's really nobody out there, so everybody has flaws. A.J. Green got his career back together last year, but that was more for a team that has a quarterback who buys time and scrambles. He wasn't the true number 1 in that offense. He's certainly older, and how much do you want to pay him? And just like Julio Jones, I think he can still play, but can you get a good deal on him? The Saints have to be smart and wait out the market on that and continue to explore trade options that we may not see really come to fruition until draft week or during the draft. The Saints know they've got to have a good enough option at number 2 to be better than what they've been. It can't be Traquan Smith. Again, Marcus Callaway played really well last year. It can't be him. They're 3rd and 4th receivers.
Exactly. Those guys, and even Hardy, again, who really, it looks like could be a playmaker. A
limited snaps guy, a matchup guy. He's not going to stay healthy at my size. That's right. Sorry. We don't make it in the NFL if we're taking 90% of the snaps.
I would agree. Which leads you to, again, having to bring in at least 1 or 2 playmakers, okay, to be able to help Jameis Winston. And look, you got to have depth as well. Looks like the Taysom Hill quarterback experiment is over. I would caution people to think that he's never going to take a snap again, because I think that the quarterback power is so successful for them that I think they're going to continue to utilize that. I think we'll see him in the backfield, maybe carrying the ball. Okay, but he's going to be the F tight end. But what it does is it makes him, again, focus on the jack of all trades. My concern is the Liz Frank injury. At his age, the ability to come back and to stay healthy. He stayed relatively healthy here in New Orleans, considering, again, constantly injured at Brigham Young. What are your thoughts now on this move? Again, I think that, and also comment on the contract, because I think a lot of people get confused about the big number we saw as opposed to what the real number is.
Right. Let's knock out that first without having the raw numbers in front of me. It's a much different contract if he's not taking true snaps at quarterback.
It's about $10 million a year.
Right. And he's the type of playmaker who brings a lot to the table in theory. Now, we don't know at his age and his injury issues in practice if that'll work out, but the contract's not an issue at all.
Really not.
Mickey Loomis and company know what they're doing. Forget about that. It's the right decision. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I would not be surprised, and I almost expect this might be Taysom Hill's last year in the NFL. I just don't know how many more hits his body, his head, all the way down can take. The injuries are starting to rack up. Concussions being a big issue.
He's 31.
Yeah, and the wear and tear on his tires go back to college when he had many injuries. And now he's going to be in a position where he's going to take a lot more hits. I'm sure he's going to see more special teams time again, where he's another valuable asset. When's the next hit going to be the last? I think the Saints are thinking that way, and they're going to try to squeeze as much blood out of that turnip as they possibly can, and that's what they should do. And that's how they're going to move forward, because he can be a weapon. And the best we saw out of him as far as what would help this year's team is the fact that you can match him up on a safety, you can match him up on a linebacker, and he can make plays down the seam and down the sideline to help you stretch the field, which fits right in Jameis Winston's wheelhouse. I give a lot of credit to Dennis Allen for thinking this way, because I think whatever speculation we want to do about how much Taysom Hill, the quarterback, was Sean Payton's obsession, pet project, whatever you want to label it, versus everybody else in the organization thinking differently. They are moving in a different direction. We happen to agree with it. A lot of people do, and hopefully you get the most out of Taysom Hill in that role while getting much better quarterback play, because now you have a settled starter, hopefully, and now you have a better backup as far as the true backup than you had last year. I think the Andy Dalton signing basically closed the door on Hill, just like they said it did.
Talk about Andy Dalton. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, you're talking about a guy that, again, had a great career at Cincinnati. He's played in a couple different places where, again, the offensive line was either injured or not very good. He needs protection to be effective, especially at his age. But, again, to me, when I looked at the quarterback market, in terms of backups, I thought he was the best of the rest.
Right. It was a great signing because he fits exactly what they need. You want somebody as a backup quarterback who can run the offense similarly to what you're already doing. He's much more in line with doing that than what the limited Trevor Siemian did, and certainly what Taysom Hill can do when he's behind center. And the thing about him is you're like a train going down the tracks during the season. You're going 200 miles an hour. The backup quarterback has to be the guy who steps in there for as long as needed, and the train doesn't flip off the tracks. Trevor Siemian went 0-4 as a starter. The train went off the tracks, and the Saints missed the playoffs. If something happens to Winston this time, Dalton's the type of guy who can give you the chance to win every game you play, who can maybe even settle in and give you a little more than that on a given day. It's a no-brainer for the Saints, considering if you don't have a great number one, you better have a really good number two, so there's not much drop-off based on what you're already missing without having a star quarterback.
I would also say he's got veteran quarterback eyes.
Sure.
So on the sidelines, and you would hope that Winston's going to work in concert, right? He'll be able to see things to help him on the sidelines. Plus, I think he's going to push him.
Sure.
I think he's going to push him in training camp. I think he's going to push him every day, and you need that that push, for a quarterback. Sometimes maybe not for a guy like Breeze, but I think you need that push. All right. They lose Toronto Armstead. What happens? Do they flip Ramczyk? Do they go with Hurst? Do they draft a tackle in the first 2 rounds of the draft? Do they go with Landon Young at the right tackle position? The kid they brought in, all SEC from Kentucky last year. Where do they go?
All those options are on the table, and I think it comes down to how the draft board plays out for them. Based on how they rank players in their tiers, they might be aggressive, and they've been aggressive many times before. Moving up, they could move up for the right player. It could be a wide receiver. It could be a tackle. Even though we're not hearing anything, it could still be a quarterback. We don't know. But we know that left tackle and wide receiver are by far huge needs compared to everything else they have on the team. They've never been a team, though, in the end to draft for those needs. So for anybody to assume it's going to be left tackle, wide receiver, or wide receiver, left tackle with their first 2 picks in the first 2 rounds, throw that out the window as an assumption, because you just can't predict how they're going to value the draft board. They're not going to change in that area. We'll have a better feel for it between now and the draft based on what they sign out of free agency, and they're much more likely to sign the help they need at receiver to make them feel a little bit more comfortable in a draft that's very deep at that position, where they can feel like 2nd round, 3rd round, we might be able to get a guy who ends up being our number 2 receiver by the end of the season, versus the importance of left tackle and how rare that is to get that kind of help. I think if they do wind up drafting a young tackle or moving forward just with what they have because it was the best they can do, that James Hurst will wind up being the left tackle, and they're not going to move Ramczyk from the right side. They really need stability at a couple of spots, at least on the line, and they have that with Eric McCoy at center. They have that with Ramczyk at right tackle. The huge question mark at right guard is Cesar Ruiz a player or not? Make or break this year, you find that out. Andrus Peat, it's an investment that winds up maybe being sunk cost. You'll have a better feel for that this year as well. You've got a couple question marks there. At least they know they can survive with Hurst at left tackle and be okay. They won't have the same type of overall quality on their line, and their left side certainly won't be as strong as it's been in the past. But if that's the worst option that they have, we've seen enough of Hurst to know that they can make it work.
Yeah. Okay. You lose Drew Brees, then you lose Sean Payton this year. Armstead, Jenkins gone now. Again, those were leaders. Sure. Obviously, the big leader was Payton. Those were leaders in the locker room. You got a little bit of change in the guard here now as these guys start to get old. Again, this culture has been passed down from Payton to Brees, and then onward. How much does that affect this team this year, if at all?
It could have a huge effect because those voices when times get tough,
right.
Those voices when things are going well, and then all of a sudden the hiccup comes.
Right.
All of that, when you have the leaders in the locker room, the players can handle that situation, I think, a lot better than the coach trying to set the tone. But at the same time, I think Dennis Allen understood that. That's why there were more changes on the coaching staff than we expected. It's time to mix it up a little bit. New voices in the locker room, both as coaches, and now you want some more young leaders to emerge, while still not needing that to happen all the way across the board, because you do have Cam Jordan and Demario Davis in particular who bring that. So you want that sort of turnover where you always have a couple of guys who have been there and done that with your organization that can lead from the player perspective, and then those next guys start stepping up because they sense the void and they step up into it. In a perfect world, and the Saints have been very successful for a long time, competitive year in, year out for a long time, that happens, and it has happened. I suspect that will still happen here for the Saints, but there are no guarantees because Sean Payton was such a definitive leader who understood how to reach his team most of the time. He rarely took those different angles to try to get their attention and failed to do so.
Right.
We don't know if Dennis Allen has that in him yet.
Final question for you. Needs. Offensive tackle, wide receiver, running back, safety. Would you add anything or subtract anything to that?
I'd love to have another piece at tight end who at least brings reliability to the table, if not a higher upside.
Even with Taysom Hill now?
Yes, because again, I think the Saints should assume, coming off the foot injury, coming off his career of injury issues, they should think of him as a gadget player only until proven otherwise.
What about Troutman's emerging again after a down year last year? I mean, is that something that you would take into account, or do you still think you need that vet?
I think that's what they want, but don't you need a backup plan? I don't think Nick Vanette's that backup plan.
Not right now.
Maybe Juwan Johnson works in more so that it's the combination of Hill and Johnson that brings you that F tight end, the quote-unquote queen receiver first tight end. So you'll always have that as a role that you can build your offense around. But I still would like to have maybe a better option as that all-around player. Vanette's bounced around for a reason. Troutman didn't even play scholarship football, even though he was an FCS player and has the talent. We're going to know right away with him this year. He's either going to be a good NFL player or, you're going to have to move on.
All right, guys, just want to throw this out to you. Saints can begin off-season workouts because they have a new coach on April 4th. We have not heard anything from the team if they're going to take advantage of that. If not, it's April 18th for the start of OTAs for the rest of the league. And, of course, we know the draft is April the 28th through the 30th. We're going to talk when we come back just about the change in Tampa Bay, and then we're going to move on to the Pelicans. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Jude Young of CrescentCitySports.com, 106.1 FM, and the voice of UNO Athletics is our guest. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Stick around.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Jude Young of CrescentCitySports.com, 106.1, and the voice of UNO Athletics is our guest. All right, one more football note before we roll into to basketball and talk about the Pels. Bruce Arians has moved into the front office. Todd Bowles takes over for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So much speculation out there about what happened. Talk that Brady gave an ultimatum to the Bucs saying, "Look, I'll come back, but Arians got to go to the front office or he's got to retire. I'm not playing under him. Bring Bowles or Leftwich up." Okay. Other than that, I'll stay retired. Some felt that again, Arians felt like he was going to move on, and of course, what they're putting out there right now, they wanted to leave Bowles with a Super Bowl type team. What's your take? What do you think happened?
Well, I mean, we can speculate all day long and not know the truth unless Tom Brady wanted to share something that I don't think we're ever going to hear from him. But I don't think he and Arians, as odd as this sounds, because they won a Super Bowl together, were actually a great fit. Philosophically, Arians is an offensive-minded coach. He was much more of the vertical passing game thought. And the offense clearly changed that first year with Brady as they went on to win the Super Bowl to fit his needs, his comfort zone, and they got better as a result. I don't think they ever really saw eye to eye as far as philosophy goes. And for Brady to come back, maybe some things were said weeks ago. I'm thinking about coming back. I don't know if I want to continue this relationship with Arians, who was able to then perhaps save face by saying, look, I wanted to give my guys, you mentioned Leftwich and Bowles, their chances to interview for other jobs. It didn't happen. And by my stepping down now and taking a front office job, I'm helping them. And I'm also helping diversity in the league. So he looks really good as a Super Bowl championship coach who's graciously stepping away. And Brady coming back makes everybody happy. It fits the narrative enough where I don't think there'll be any more heavy investigation into it. The only thing that matters to the Saints is they're still going to be awfully tough to beat and the clear-cut favorite in the division.
How much do they change now? How much has that team changed now without Arians?
Not much. I just think it's Tom Brady having more control over what they do down in, down out.
I agree.
And how is that a bad thing if you're a Tampa Bay fan?
That's the first thing I thought was, this guy is calling his own plays. This guy's going to pretty much control the offense. Bowles going to control the defense. And
Byron Leftwich was a really good NFL quarterback. And clearly they see eye to eye, or Leftwich would have exited stage right as well.
And also he can use this to catapult him to an NFL job.
Right. It's like what would happen if somebody, well, say Pete Carmichael in New Orleans had more aspirations than apparently he has as a coach. This would be a perfect opportunity for him to prove himself to actually be a head coach somewhere now that Sean Payton is gone, just like we see in Kansas City for a local and Eric Bieniemy who's not getting that chance because it's still Andy Reid's offense.
Yes, I agree. All right, let's switch gears to the Pelicans. 33-43, they're the 9th seed. They're 1.5 games ahead of the Lakers, who are in 10th. 2 games over the Spurs. They're 5. I think it's 5 games left yet now. They're at Los Angeles on Friday. The Clippers on Sunday. At Sacramento. Portland at home. At Memphis. Golden State. Those last 2 games look like they'll be resting their players.
Right.
Okay. Meanwhile, the Spurs are back-to-back against Portland, at Denver, at Minnesota, at Golden State, at Dallas. The Lakers at Utah tonight, and then a back-to-back with the Pelicans. The Pelicans come in, go play in Los Angeles on Saturday. Friday. Denver at Phoenix, at Golden State, Oklahoma City, at Denver. The road for the Pelicans looks pretty good.
Right.
Okay, it really does. Especially now having, in the 9th seed, up a game and a half. I got to believe that if they're physically able, we'll see Anthony Davis and LeBron James on Friday night.
Right.
Okay? If they're not, they pretty much at that point just pulled the plug on it. But I think this is going to be their last hurrah. We had heard that LeBron was shutting it down for the rest of the season. And then we heard that again, that no, he's just going to sit out the game against Utah and going to try to come back. Davis is going to try to come back. What are your thoughts on first of all, before we get into the macro, let's do the micro just on that game, because that's a huge game in Los Angeles this week.
Right, and we don't know what percentage of ability you're going to get out of Davis and or LeBron if they do play that game. Clearly closer to full strength for LeBron than what Davis has been dealing with. His typical story, it's always something. Yeah, all the emotions are going to be on the Lakers side because they were angry at what happened when they blew that big lead in New Orleans. And the reaction by the Pelicans, obviously. It was a big win for a young team and an organization that has reasons to dislike the Lakers, going back to the alleged tampering with the Anthony Davis deal that happened.
It was tampering.
I'm just saying that because I'm in the media. We all know what happened, and that's how the league works. And now the Lakers, well, let's just say that the Pelicans have their attention. How much of it is, do the Lakers really believe they can get into the postseason and make a run versus they don't want to get shown up by New Orleans? When you just talk about LeBron making his decisions, Anthony Davis making his decisions as far as playing. Because the bigger picture for the Lakers is that draft pick that the Pelicans can gain if they finish in the bottom 10.
Right.
And that means if they don't make the playoffs, or even if they do and they can't make their way through the play-in, if they finish in the top 10, New Orleans gets that pick. And that is a big deal, maybe more for the Lakers. For New Orleans, it's just another asset with a team that's really, and they desperately needed, either to trade with to keep LeBron happier, to get some help if they feel like they can, or if they get lucky in the lottery. So that's a bigger deal, I think, for the Lakers. But I still don't know how much LeBron James is thinking about that, because I think he's got superstar disease when it comes to his decision making, and he's not the best GM, just like the deal to bring in Westbrook. True. And the way they put together their roster, he's making these calls or having too much say in them, and it's hurting this franchise. Whereas the people who are running it in the Buss family are going, man, we really can't afford to lose that pick. Or the crash everybody predicted that once it would all fall apart would be devastating may happen sooner than we were hoping. So the dynamic is fascinating. It's great to be on the Pelicans side, because that would be just lagniappe. The key for the Pels, try to finish at least ninth. Host that first playoff play-in game, whether it's the Lakers or it's the Spurs, and bring that excitement to New Orleans. And if you can win it, no matter what happens after that, all the momentum you gain from the finish, the leadership of McCollum after the trade, the hopes for Zion for the future, it can all add up to something where you finish on a high note, even if you do wind up losing in that play-in.
Well, and look, for the Pelicans, I think, again, I think it's critical for them to get to the playoffs. Sure. Okay, to have. Well,
if you call the play in the playoffs, yeah, it's critical for them to have that experience. But
I'm talking about a series.
Sure. Well,
because again, I think it helps them in their growth. As a team. I think the Lakers are a little peeved because they feel like Brandon Ingram was held back. Okay, I think that's one of the things.
What are the Lakers going to do? Again, this is on Thursday. Folks will watch the replay. You mentioned Utah tonight. Are LeBron and Anthony Davis playing Utah?
No, they're not. They're holding them back for Friday.
Right, exactly. And for the Pelicans, their thoughts based on the schedule and who was more vulnerable and the timing of it, which game came first. Maybe if the Laker game would have came first, they would have played that. And even if they lost to the Lakers, Ingram would have played in that game and not played the next day because they were trying to be careful because they need him for the stretch run. This is the Lakers thinking too much of themselves and the Lakers and throwing fuel on a fire that only helps the Pelicans feel like, hey, we're in it. We're in a big national debate and argument with the LA Lakers. We're now relevant. That's huge for the New Orleans Pelicans.
It's the next step.
Yeah.
For LeBron, I read that he needs 3 more games to qualify for scoring for titles, you know, within the NBA. So I got to feel he's going to try to play 3 more games. Now, again, the ankle was legitimately hurt. Let's talk about this turnaround, though. First of all, let's give a lot of, as much grief as I've given David Griffin, I think he needs to get some credit based on, again, being able to dig himself out of this hole. Now, again, it took some first-round picks to do it, okay, but he was able to get to make up for the Adams and the Bledsoe moves from last year. He brings in Valanciunas, which again has been a big, he's been a huge part of this team. You make the deal for C.J. McCollum. You go in and just to, honestly, as good of a draft as I've seen for an NBA team in a long, long time. When you're able to get a first-round pick who now, and Trey Murphy, feels like, again, he's comfortable. You can see what he can do. Herb Jones all year long has been a linchpin for this team. And then you get Jose Alvarado as an undrafted free agent out of Georgia Tech. What he's been able to do as really a spark plug for this team on the defensive end, and he shoots the lights out on the ball. He really does. And then you talk about, again, bringing in a Larry Nance and a Tony Snell with that deal with C.J. McCollum, which again I think Larry Nance is an underrated part of that deal because he can play multiple positions for you and doesn't need the ball to be effective. The BI coming into his own.
Which is because of the hire of Willie Green.
No
That's
doubt
why
about
all of these players are meshing the right way. And that was the best decision he's made.
That is the #1 decision.
Because it's hard to give a coach a 5-year contract and then pull the plug after 1 year.
I agree.
And he realized he had to do it.
But it was the culture change because of Willie Green. And then the buy-in from the players. And again, so every button that he has pushed this year has worked. And it looks sustainable, which is something that we've talked about for a long, long time. All this without Zion. When you look at the transformation, talk about it. I mean, I believe it's sustainable. And when I look at this, I see players that continue to grow within this system this year.
Right. It's certainly sustainable because a lot of the pieces that you have to fit into the salary cap, which is going to be a challenge moving forward, with or without Zion signing the big deal that he's going to wind up signing in the end. Having young, affordable, cheap talent is huge. So when you can find a second-round gem like Herb Jones, you can find an Alvarado as an undrafted player, that's massive towards fitting those pieces. Najee Marshall. And again, that's been their greatest strength, has been finding those untapped gems, those underrated guys. as far as the front office goes, and that's not a surprise based on Trajan Langdon's background.
I agree.
They've done as well this year in the last, close to 12 months as they did poorly the previous 12 months. But I will now defend. We can now look back on the big picture, the whole picture, and say, it's not always easy to keep moving pieces and trying to get better. Sometimes the market doesn't agree with you. It doesn't work out for you. People don't want to play for you because you haven't won. So you keep making changes where you need to, starting with the head coach, starting with the roster. Keep shuffling, keep having enough assets available so that you can strike when a McCollum becomes available on a good deal until you can get it right. And in the end, that's what's important. The end. Is he going to get it right in the end? Add Zion to what they have right now. They're a top 4 Western Conference team. So he's gotten it right. I don't think that's a stretch to say they're a top 4 Western Conference team with the Zion we saw in his All-Star season. So he's gotten it right. He may have gone the long way around, but for the Pelicans, it was always going to be a zigzagging road, not a straight line, despite the assets they had, despite having an Ingram and a Zion in place. Because to build a winning roster, it takes a whole lot more than that. And there have been players better than Zion and Ingram that have never had real success in the NBA and had long careers because the front office, the coach, the roster was never right. It's really hard to get it that right. We look at teams like what the Spurs have done for so long, what the Nuggets have been doing lately. The Suns getting it right. It's a lot more difficult than it looks, because if it were so easy, the way the NBA is set up, the Lakers would always be top 3 record in the league, the big market teams. It's now got enough parity in it, so it's really hard to do, but a team like New Orleans can actually get it done.
All right, let's talk Zion. Has a chance to sign the extension this summer. Will he be willing to sign a Joel Embiid, protect the club type extension?
I don't think he wants to.
Is that what they're going to offer him? Or are they going to say, you know what? We're all in. We're just going to give him the extension. We can move away from it in a couple of years if things go wrong. I mean, again,
well, here's why I think it's impossible to answer that question on this date at this time.
Right.
I think Zion Williamson is going to play before this season and postseason's over.
You think he's coming back?
I think he's demanding it, and the player gets what he wants.
I agree he's demanding it, but are they willing to sacrifice what they have in terms of their rotation, culture, to bring him back? See, I'm one of the ones that said, I'd let him come back, bring him off the bench.
Right, I agree with that. I think that might be the compromise that we have here. But I think now that he sees, oh, this is a good situation, I'm feeling good again, he wants to play. The Pelicans really, you may hate this is the NBA. The Pelicans hold a lot of the cards right now, but for the long term, you don't want to make the superstar and his entourage angry.
Right.
If the young man wants to play and you clear and say he's healthy enough to at least play in some capacity, I think you have to play him.
Right.
And if something happens and he breaks down, wouldn't it be better to happen now before you sign him to a deal that may not have those protections versus Zion saying, if I can come back and be a factor now, I don't have to sign that Embiid deal. I get the full deal that I'm capable of grabbing and have that security. That's me proving that I'm okay now. So that's what I think's going on there. He's competitive enough and wants to play and sees a good situation now, and I think his people are thinking about that contract. If he comes back and contributes now and he doesn't have any injury problems, he wins. He'll get the contract he wants without any stipulations.
I mentioned 5 games. It's really 6. Okay. When do you bring him back?
Maybe as soon as that homestand that starts late next week.
Yeah.
So I think Thursday they have their next home game. Wouldn't surprise me, him playing 15, 20 minutes a game. Minutes restriction again. But might be something this time because of the situation of him missing so much time that he'll be happy with.
Got a better roster.
Right.
Okay, I mean, again, you're bringing him in, maybe Larry Nance is losing time.
If 5 of those minutes are crunch time and he's the old Zion that can help you close out games, who can argue with that?
Right. See, again, that was my take too. My take is, if he really wants to play, he's got to come off the bench. Right. And he's got to fit into what's going on here, because there is a rotation. He can't, that doesn't mean he's going to be the closing 5.
Well, the latter, you fit him in. Right. Just are you willing to play the limited minutes no matter when we play you? And it's probably better for us to, have you go up against backups early your first couple of games. You're coming in the second quarter. But if you're really good in the second quarter and you look like Zion, that doesn't mean you won't be out there in the last 5 minutes with CJ and BI and the rest. I think he'll be open enough to that if you say, yes, we'll play you if this time versus last time where he completely didn't agree with it.
Yeah, and again, everybody knew it. Okay, let's shift gears from the Pels to the Final Four. First of all, the basketball gods smiled on New Orleans.
Sure.
Well, when you look at from our economy, post-pandemic, the hospitality industry, what we need in terms of, again, that boost, what we need to be able to prove to the world again that this is a hospitality destination. We are ready.
Right.
Okay. Now again, we passed the test during Mardi Gras, but this is different. This is an international sporting event with the media from all over the world descending on New Orleans now. So from that standpoint, it's a big week for us.
Right.
The flip side is you couldn't have asked for a better Final Four to be able to put eyes back on New Orleans. Villanova versus Kansas, Duke versus North Carolina, blue blood Final Four, where again a lot of people would like a Cinderella. I do, okay, but I got to be honest with you, I wasn't put over St. Pete's because of the situation with LSU being the 11th seed way back when.
Right.
That's just me. But this really works out really well for the city, and for the final, for the NCAA, they got to be just ecstatic about this matchup.
It doesn't get better from storylines.
Right.
The attention New Orleans is going to receive, not only because it's the first full Final Four in a couple of years because of the pandemic, but because you've got Coach K retiring. He's never played North Carolina in the NCAA tournament. Now they're meeting in the Final Four. It doesn't get much better than that. And then you have Villanova, which has been such a fun program to watch over the years. They're the most fun to watch play basketball because they truly play a team game. On both ends of the floor, they sacrifice for each other. And now they're missing Justin Moore, their second best scorer and probably their best defender. Really hurts them. But nobody's counting Jay Wright's team out. And oh, by the way, Kansas, which, you know, obviously a powerhouse, but also some of the LSU fans are going to be paying more attention to it because of the deal where Bill Self's still their coach and Will Wade's not LSU's coach anymore. And this could be a deal where if Kansas wins the national championship this year, they won't be able to defend it because they wind up going on probation. So the NCAA doesn't like that storyline, but you've got it from all angles. And I almost forgot Caleb Daniels saying product, the Tulane transfer, he's back home. You've got everything from a local, national, international perspective. It couldn't get any better. People are pouring into town. The events are great. All of the social media posts from people visiting who have thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers talking about, wow, it's so great to be back in New Orleans. The food, the culture, the experience, the perfect setup downtown. It really is a big step forward for New Orleans truly being back.
It really is. All right, let's talk about the games. Again, talk first of all, Villanova, Kansas. Your thoughts?
Kansas is deeper, especially now after the injury. They have inside-outside balance. I'm still not going to count Villanova out because they can do exactly what they did against Houston in the Elite Eight. They can really slow you down. They have one of the slowest paces in the country, and they're going to make you work on both ends. They're going to make you earn it. If you make mistakes, they'll make you pay for it. I still think Kansas is going to win, but I think it's going to be a squeaker and maybe not the type of game that the modern NBA fan likes. It wouldn't shock me if first to 55 won that game if Villanova has their way. But on the flip side, even though I think Kansas is going to win there, I think Duke and North Carolina, they're going to go right at it in the nightcap. It's going to be exciting, up and down. And the pressure, people are arguing because Duke lost their final game at home at Cameron Indoor against North Carolina. Coach K's final home game, that now they have a psychological edge. Don't believe it. It's still mounds of pressure on those Duke players. Because the last thing they want to do is to lose that game and then lose here to end the man's career against the arch rival. Whereas North Carolina, first-year head coach Hubert Davis, they may be an 8th seed, but their talent matches the other two powerhouses that are fully healthy in that Final Four. I think North Carolina is going to win the national championship. I think they have all the momentum, and they're the best team I've seen from a talent and inside-outside perspective. Hubert Davis found that team, and they found him right around the start of February, and nobody's played better than them against high-quality competition since then.
I agree the winner of that game wins the national championship.
I feel very strongly about that. I think North Carolina is winning it all. If I'm wrong and Duke does, and the Cinderella story that could possibly be for a blue blood superpower happens, so be it. But I just have a feeling North Carolina has everything going their way. The lack of pressure and all the motivation in the world.
All right, let's shift gears to Brian Kelly and the rebuilding of the culture at LSU. I am so impressed with his SWAT team philosophy, putting the onus on the players to be able to, again, police themselves. no one has a position. You have to be able to go out and earn it. I think it's the way you build the foundation of a program. Your
It
thoughts?
was desperately needed at LSU after the Ed Orgeron era to establish that it's still a privilege to play and compete for a position on the field at LSU. Kelly brings that in. He has the background, the respect coming in to be able to pull that off. He's got the balance on his coaching staff, I think, to be able to back him up and institute that plan, but also provide a buffer because he is a hard-edged, hard-nosed guy. And these players in the end, as long as they're giving a fair chance to compete at every position, most of them are going to stick it out, versus if you feel like the players are so empowered that you're begging them and you don't want to bring in extra competition, you're afraid they're going to immediately go out the door. You can't have a successful program that way. Kelly understands all of that, and it's going to make LSU, I think, maximize their potential. I think they're going to have a very good season this year because there's enough talent there for them to compete on their schedule. And who's to say they can't win 10 games if everything goes right? Considering they've been 500 the last 2 years, they were down to 38 scholarship players in their bowl game. Doing that probably won't feel impressive because of just how good Kelly is and what he's already establishing. But it's really hard to think that too many coaches could come in without the understanding and the background he has to be able to pull off what I think is going to wind up happening in Baton Rouge. They're going to be a fun LSU top 20 type at minimum team again. And all the credit goes to Kelly for being able to do that, starting with the idea that we're not going to bend that much on our culture.
Willie Fritz's spring, a lot of guys that played high school well in New Orleans have come back to augment that roster. Your thoughts?
That's a great way to do it as far as using the portal goes, because you get guys coming back down or looking for their opportunity there and their chance. They're going to be grateful for it. When it comes down to it, what will Tulane get out of their offense? It really goes back to that. I think their defense showed enough strides late in the season that they're moving forward and writing it off as just the worst-case scenario type of year after a coordinator change. They'll be fine there. It goes back to what we talk about in their conference isn't going to change. You better be able to win some shootouts. They've got the talent to do that. Having a Tajay Spears at running back, having Michael Pratt coming back for a third year as a starter, but you have a new coordinator again. Will this be the year that gets it right? Receivers have to be much more sure-handed than they were because you can't attack people and sling the ball around if guys can't catch it. We'll see how that works out, but I think Fritz is trying to do it the right way to try to get them out of that 6-6 as a ceiling type malaise. It'd be really good, though, this year after 2-10 to get back to 6-6. That would be a success.
Minute left. Loyola National Championships, NAIA.
I want to give a lot of credit to Brett Simpson, the athletic director of that department, because it's not just about basketball, men's and women's competing at the highest level in the NAIA, but their baseball team's nationally ranked for the second straight year. They've built from nothing when I was at the school. No scholarships, no sports to truly be proud of as an alum. What they've done starts with Simpson and Stacey Hollowell. Every day I look and see when's he going to get another job. I know it's NAIA, so it's a little harder to make that next step forward. But he's got to rebuild now, and Loyola would be very fortunate if he's sticking around to be able to do that after having these great seniors led by Zach Reitzel and Miles Burns moving on. It's a phenomenal story, and keep an eye on Loyola in the next couple of years. I think they're setting,
I think they are
not
too.
just a little up. I think they and Xavier down the street. I think they're both thinking about NCAA Division I as a final stomping ground.
I agree 100%. All right, last question, 30 seconds. We get it in. Matt McMahon, new head coach over at LSU.
He's got a lot to do, but he's going to bring in experienced transfers, including we know at least one now from Murray State, the one from Northwestern State, Kendall Coleman. I saw him play several games against UNO. He's a very good find as well, but the SEC is going to be awfully tough, and I don't know if he's the right guy for the job, honestly. He's got a gargantuan task even before sanctions come down. LSU fans are going to have to be patient and shake off the fact that many of them are still angry that Will Wade's gone.
Jude Young, thanks so much for joining us, as always.
My pleasure.
CrescentCitySports.com, voice of UNO Athletics, and of course 106.1 FM, all access every Tuesday night. All right, thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, plenty of ways to be able to catch our program now. Our first rebroadcast tonight at 6 p.m. right here on WLAE-TV, 10 p.m. on The Deuce. Friday night, 9 o'clock, Pelican Sports Television, 10 o'clock LAE. Saturday morning at 2 a.m. on The Deuce, and then Saturday afternoon at 5 p.m. on WLAE-TV. All right, on Pelican Sports Television, pardon me. All right, don't forget, on the radio, 106.1 FM, weekdays 4 to 6. You can listen live at ericasher.com, iHeartRadio app, TuneIn Radio app. Great way to take the show with you on our digital platforms. Also, again, the podcasts on the Anchor podcasting platform. We're on all podcasting platforms now, so check us out there. At Eric_Asher on Twitter, Eric Asher on Facebook, Inside New Orleans Show on Instagram. And there's a QR code if you want to, on the screen, if you want to click on that to be able to catch our YouTube broadcast, as well as, again, my website as well. All right, I want to thank our underwriters who make the show possible. Also, I want to thank the production staff right here at WLAE-TV, Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, also Logan Graffito, and Alex Chacon, and my director, William Hill. For Jude Young, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll check you in for another week of sports, and we'll talk about it next week here on Inside New Orleans Sports.